Since the independence of Tresor, we have learned that it is far safer to live under the justice of heaven, but it is also less forgiving. High Justice O'Neill, 2990 AC. On the southern end of Pericol was the domain of Tresor, ruled by a scar lord named Vane, until 2960 AC, when an uprising deposed them, and it negotiated independence from Pericol. For nearly 1,000 years, Tresor was the domain of Verlutrek, a ghost dragon who died centuries before the Cataclysm, and whose hoard had remained hidden until Heathcliff discovered it following a punitive expedition into one of Kenyore's predecessor states. The other government quickly abandoned the area, leaving it to Pericol. Unlike other dragons, Verlutrek cared little for precious metals and gems, except in their value to others, so that she could expand her collection of historical and magical artifacts. Verlutrek saw the prosperity of Tresor and the revenues that came from it as a way to further her collection. This obsession will lead to her downfall with the discovery and acquisition in 2801 AC of 3 planar prisons. These were ornate boxes that each contain multiple shifting planar mazes. These were designed to hold beings of immense power, but were more frequently used to hold and hide fortunes or powerful items. She spent nearly a year on trying to access the boxes, but once she did, she found innumerable treasures. However, she also found a powerful entity hidden in each box. With the help of Vane, who served as her right hand at the time, these entities were defeated. 40 years later, Vane would betray Verlutrek, taking her domain for his own. What he didn't know was that the entities were not destroyed, but rather trapped by Verlutrek in the nearest vessel that could contain their power, the boxes having been destroyed, which happened to be Vane himself. Without Verlutrek to reinforce the binding, they gradually began to assert themselves over the century, manifesting their actions under the cover of different personalities of the Skull Lord. During this time, several nations led by Kenyore began to test Pericol and threaten war, stirred by who they thought was Vane. The restlessness developed into disorganized uprisings at the same time. This would continue until 2950 AC, when Aasimar started to appear in Tresor and started to organize the disparate groups into an actual rebellion. After 7 years, the rebels had control of most of Tresor, and Vane had disappeared. Over the next 3 years, negotiations took place over the future of Tresor. Outside nations attempted to gain influence, and Kenyore even tried to claim the territory based on dubious family connections from long ago. This was quickly rebuffed, not by Pericol, but by Tresor itself. In 2960, Tresor was granted independence on condition of its neutrality in perpetuity. In the last century, there has been no greater upset than Pericol's unwillingness to crush the rebellion. Heathcliff left Tresor to Vane despite having removed other domain lords for far less, and seemed content to allow its independence despite having the means to put down such rebellion, and having done so in the past. In the 4 decades since their independence, Tresor has continued to prosper. The undead ruling elite have been replaced by Aasimars, but they seem more than willing to share their power with others and have a decreasing number of high-level positions as proportion to their population. Tresor has the greatest amount of citizen participation of any nation on Ethelcar. While most of the laws are passed by council, either national or local, the final authority rests with the triumvirate, a reclusive body that is never seen by the commoners, and those that do have an audience before it never speak of it. Because of this, Tresor is not a true democratic society, but since the triumvirate is so hands-off, it is considered such by most people. The capital city, Sen, is a cosmopolitan one with many districts, including the largest concentration of genasi outside of Al-Sadan and high populations of dwarves and gnomes. This is a well-run city and has been built and rebuilt over the centuries dating back to before the Cataclysm. Ragusa is the second largest city in Tresor, through which much of its trade flows in and out. One of the first things that Tresor did when it gained its independence was to establish its own school for magical arts as part of the new nation's drive for self-reliance. Magical colleges rely on institutional memory, and Caesarea hasn't achieved that yet, but it has been recognized as a school with great potential. Caesarea graduates do not pay for their schooling, but are instead required to enter government service for 7 years after graduation. This also counts for their normal civic service requirements of any Tresor citizen. Most fulfill this requirement by serving as reservists for the militia for a period of 25 years. Service time can be bought out after 5 years. Due to the highly trained population, Tresor has earned itself a reputation for high-priced mercenary units.